Another lesson in history. We're on to lesson 4 of chapter 7 as we got the Greeks. Tuesday we took on the end of the Persian Wars, where Sparta and Athens specifically joined together to fight the Persians. They fought a number of battles. They won the one at Marathon. Thermopylae might be considered a loss, but that's where the 300 held their own. Then the Persians eventually got around them, went to Athens and burned it down. But they fought the battle at Salamis and the sea, where they took out a lot of boats. And so over time, guys, Athens's Greeks are able to push Persia back. Now we're going to go in time and we're going to see how Sparta and Athens work together, and yet both are going to grow up with different philosophies, and eventually they're going to lead to war with each other. Okay? So we're ready to get rolling here. We're after this question today: how do governments change? And the Peloponnesian War had a decisive effect on Greece. Greek culture declined after the Athenians lost to Sparta. So the Peloponnesian War, guys, is the war between Sparta and Athens. You already know who wins. It's Sparta, but you're going to see the overall impact that comes from that. All right, let's get rolling. As the Persian Wars ended, Athens became a powerful and self-confident city-state. From 461 to 429 BC, the Athenians, under their new leader Pericles, very famous ruler, guys, enjoyed a golden age of prosperity and achievement. So you got your first blank, guys. Anytime you hear the word golden age in the future, I usually think of what we call peace and prosperity. Prosperity is making money, guys. And if we want to make money, we have to have peace. In other words, we're not spending money on wars right now. Wars are very expensive. As we go into golden ages where we're not fighting wars, then we can use all our money to run good businesses. As soon as you start running good businesses, people have extra money. What do they do with their extra money? That's the achievements, guys. Okay, so you'll think about creating music, creating statues, making monuments. All these nicer things in life, they come during moments of prosperity. Because if I didn't have any money, guys, I'm not spending it on a work of art. I'm spending it on food so I stay alive. And so you think about during times of war, what are people doing? They're making sure our soldiers have food and our families have food. So when war stops, then this can happen. Okay, keep that in mind in the future, what a golden age is. Peace, prosperity. Their city-state became the economic and cultural center of Greece. Athens also practiced democratic government. So this is where you came for business, and this is what when we call it the cultural center. This is like the happening times. This is where you went if you were big into music, you were big into philosophy, you were big into art. People from around the world came, guys, and they shared their ideas. That's why we call it a cultural center, because all kinds of different cultures brought what was important to them and shared it in Athens. Athenians took great pride in their democratic system. The form of government practice in Athens is called direct democracy. Number 2 in your notes. In a direct democracy, all citizens meet to debate and vote on the government matters. In a representative democracy, this is the one we have in the United States, citizens elect a smaller group of people. This group represents them, makes laws, and governs on their behalf. Okay, guys, we don't have a direct democracy for a real simple reason. Our country is too big. You can maybe have a direct democracy in a city. That's about it. We can't even have a direct democracy in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin, let's say they're going to have a decision. Should we raise the speed limit to 75 miles an hour? Okay, let's talk about it. And everybody from Wisconsin would have to get together and talk about it and make that decision. Okay, everybody in America can vote, guys, but what we're doing is we're voting on our representatives, our senators, who will then go and make the rules for us. So we have a representative democracy. Athens had a direct. In ancient Athens, direct democracy worked because of its relatively small number of citizens. The assembly consisted of some 43,000 male citizens who were over the age of 18. Often, however, though, fewer than 6,000 of them participated in meetings, which were held every 10 days. At those meetings, participating citizens passed laws, you're number 3 in your notes, elected officials, and made policy on war and foreign affairs. The 10 top officials elected each year were known as generals. Okay, guys, so we'll talk about this more as we work our way through the lesson, but you have 43,000 male citizens. Remember, from last week when we talked about a citizen. They had to be male, they had to be born free, they had to own land, so there's not that many. But guys, they're holding these meetings every 10 days. And so if I'm the average male citizen, am I going to not show up for work every 10 days? No, I can't afford to do that. And so there wasn't that many people wealthy enough to be able to skip their daily work and go to these meetings. So you're talking less than 6,000 people. So when only 6,000 show up, you had this big public meeting and off you go. They decide everything. They also elect some of these important officials. So you got the little pretty picture of the little political discussion that's going on here. You can see this would be the agora, that marketplace where you get together and you just kind of talk and you kind of see all the little groups of things that are going on to try to run this system. Okay, continuing on. After the Persian Wars, the most important general in the Athenian government was Pericles. His wise rule guided the city-state for more than 30 years. Number 4 in your notes. Pericles made Athens a more democratic city-state. He appointed people to positions because of their abilities, not because they were members of a certain social class. Keep that in mind. That's a big change. It's a brilliant change, but it's really difficult. Back in the day, all the wealthy usually had the political power. Well, some wealthy people inherited a lot of money from mom and dad, but that didn't make them that smart. So he said, I'm going to pick the smartest, best people, not just do they got money or not. Pericles brought more ordinary Athenians into government. As a result, even shopkeepers and laborers could, for the first time, share in the government along with nobles and farmers. Okay, so guys, he's trying to make all the social classes present. You can see the nobles, they'd be wealthy enough to show up all the time. Farmers obviously aren't wealthy enough, but I planted my crops. Can I take a day off as the corn grows? Yes, I can. So we're still missing a major piece, and he's trying to figure out how can I get them so that they can show up for these meetings. Under Pericles' rule, Athens became a center of learning and the arts. The Persians had burned much of the city during the Persian Wars. Under Pericles, Athens was rebuilt. He built new temples, monuments, number 5 in your notes, and statues throughout the city. Pericles also supported writers, artists, teachers, sculptors, and architects. Philosophers also flourished during the rule of Pericles. Philosophers are thinkers who reflect on the meaning of life. Athens became a great center of knowledge. Pericles called the city the school of Greece. So you got number 6 in your notes, along with the vocabulary word of philosophers. You're reflecting on the meaning of life. So today, lots of us have a philosophy on life. My philosophy on life is if you work hard, you will be successful. Okay, so that's what I believe. That's my meaning of life. Work hard to equal success, because that's what life has taught me. That doesn't mean my philosophy is right if you don't agree with it. You can have your own philosophy that works for you. So if you want extra credit, number 1, guys, at the top, you write one sentence, which is your philosophy on life. And it can be anything you want. If you want to think about, if I in one sentence had to say, what's the meaning of life, or how do you be successful in life, or something like that, boom, cross the top, get some extra credit. Okay, there's this little chart in your book, guys, that I just want to pop up here. It does a good job talking the difference between the Athenian democracy and the American democracy. Obviously, we just talked about these two terms, but then they also talk about how our laws are passed, who can actually vote. The big difference in Athens, obviously, are only males. We obviously have females. It doesn't take a whole lot. They had to be born in Athens. Ours isn't that much. And then just the citizen involvement. Good chart to look at and make sure you understand. Could come in handy on some worksheets and tests. Okay, continuing on. At its height in the 400 BCs, Athens was the largest Greek city-state. Its population numbered about 285,000. Of this number, about 150,000 were citizens. Of this, only 43 of these citizens, however, were males who had political rights. Okay, so guys, you had 150,000 citizens. Here's why. Athens was home to 35,000 foreigners. That's number something on your notes. Where am I? Right here, number 7 on your notes. And 100,000 enslaved. So as soon as you do this, guys, that's 135. You subtract from that, you get your 150,000. Now, how come only 43 had political? Well, women would have been considered citizens, guys, but they don't have political rights. Their children would be considered citizens, but they don't have political rights. Okay, some people would not have been born in Athens. Some people would not have owned enough land to be considered these political rights. Um, this talks about the cultural piece that we talked about on the last page. 35,000 foreigners lived in Athens. That tells you a major cultural center, right? That I'm going to move to a different city. Even though I don't have political rights there, it's still a great city for them. Athenian men worked as farmers, artisans, and merchants. They often finished their daily work in the morning. They spent their afternoons exercising at the gymnasium. In the evening, upper class men enjoyed all male gatherings where they ate, drank, and discussed philosophy or politics. That's number 8 in your notes, guys. This is the status symbol. Can you afford to go to these gatherings? It's number 1, all male, but 2, it's upper class. And so in Greece, and then in a few chapters, guys, we'll talk about the Roman baths, where you would kind of sit around a pool and discuss politics. That was a privilege that if you were wealthy enough, you just loved it. You flaunted that because you had that status. Athenian women focused on their homes and their families. Number 9 in your notes. Girls married at a young age, often in their mid-teens. Their duties centered on having children and taking care of their households. Women of poor families helped the farm work or sold goods in the local marketplace. Most upper-class women rarely left their houses except to attend funerals and festivals. Even then, they had to be accompanied by a male relative. Upper-class women generally supervised the servants and spun, dyed, or wove cloth. Okay, so you can see the difference here between the two genders, guys. Women stayed at home. You can see they married young. We might think that's weird, guys, but just please understand that's just for health reasons. They want to start having children, and the younger and more physically fit you are, the better chance you have of living through the experience. Death in childbirth was a major problem thousands of years ago. We see examples of that in the Bible of mothers who have died in childbirth. You think about Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin. And so they just had those things. You can also see how protective they were of their women. Okay, so in other words, we don't want you out in public without being accompanied by a male relative. It's just their culture, guys. We can think that's weird or not cool at all, but we don't put our standards on it. That's what their society had accepted as normal. Continuing on, Athenian women could not attend school, but many learned to read and to play music. You got number 10 in your notes. However, Athenian society did not consider educated women as equal to men. Women could not participate in political activities or own property. Greek women were always under the care of a male family member. Husbands were responsible for their wives and unmarried daughters. Sons looked after their widowed mothers. So you can just see the role of men and women and how men were expected to take care of them until they got married. And then if dad ever died, which normally happened, usually husbands died before the wives, and the sons came back and made sure they took care of mom. A few women had more freedom, especially foreigners, who were regarded differently than Athenian-born women. One well-regarded woman was Aspasia. She was known for her intelligence and charm. Aspasia taught public speaking, and her ideas were popular among Athenians. Okay, so you have number 11 in your notes there with that sentence. Both Plato, the Greek philosopher, and Pericles were influenced by her. So you do have some exceptions to the rule, guys, but most of them were foreigners. In other words, Athens did not put their rules back on the foreigners that moved in, and so you had this foreigner in here, and you gave her the respect that she had because she was very intelligent and charming. Okay, you had a little picture of the average household, and then you had a statue to Aspasia. All right. Slavery was common in ancient civilizations. It was often considered to be a normal part of life, even by enslaved people themselves. Even in a democracy like Athens, slavery was common. In fact, most Athenian households had at least one enslaved person, number 12 in your notes. Wealthy Athenians' families often had several. So guys, another great example of something that's completely different in America, but totally different connotation. Slavery was just a normal part of life, and even slaves thought that way. Okay, so we just continue to accept that as we read through ancient history of the different norms that were accepted there. Many enslaved people were prisoners who had been captured in battle. These included both Greeks and non Greeks. Enslaved men worked on farms, in the shops of artisans, or at hard labor. Enslaved women were cooks and servants in wealthy homes and sometimes taught upper class children. The treatment of enslaved people varied. Those who labored in the mines often died very young. Slaves who worked as craftspeople had easier lives. Sometimes enslaved people could earn money, number 13 in your notes, and in rare cases then could turn around and buy their freedom. Slavery might have helped Athens develop its prosperous economy. Okay, so guys, what they're saying with slavery is it depends on what you got. Obviously, if you're in the mines here, you're dying young. Why? Because it was the dangerous, hard work, and you had lost the battle. That's what made you a slave in the first part. You're working for a person as a merchant. You're in their things. Craftspeople, they call them. It's a little bit easier. Some would treat them well. Some would not treat them well. So it's kind of true anywhere you go. It's like today when you think about bosses. Some people say, I got a really nice boss. I love my job. Other people say, I have a really mean boss. A lot of times it just depends on the boss. Back in the day, it would depend on the slave owner and how they wanted to treat him and what they did for a living. Farming was a common occupation among Athenians. Guys, statements like that, when I think about true falses on a test, farming is still the big thing. Local farmers grew grains, vegetables, and fruit, 14, including grapes and olives to make wine and olive oil for shipment to foreign markets. This is what we call a cash crop, especially olives. You think Greece, you want to think olives, cash crop. Athenians farmed lacked sufficient land to grow enough food to support the city-state. Although Athenians grew some grain, they had to import more from other places. Remember, grain is called your staple crop, which you can make every day and it lasts. Olives is not. So they're going to take these grapes and olives, they're going to ship it out, they're going to bring grain in. Athens built a large fleet of ships to trade with colonies and other city-states in the Mediterranean world. During the 400s, Athens led the Greek world in trade. So make sure you get the word Greek in here, guys. They didn't lead the world in trade, they just led the land around the Mediterranean. They're Greek. Mainland, they're a little city inside that, guys. They're the biggest city doing that. Important goods made and traded in Athens included pottery and leather products. The pottery would be big with the grapes and the wines, guys. You turn them into olive oil or wine, you put it in the pottery vases, jars like things, and ship it out there that way to be able to do those things. All right, so you got a little bit of their economy and how they're making money. We'll finish up the second half tomorrow. Have a great day.